Contact report. Translation. English translation 39th contact. Wednesday 3rd December 01 Han HRS.
You called me to this contact quite unexpectedly. I was just falling asleep, while my wife only slept for a few minutes. Thus, I have secretly sneaked away once again.
That is known to me. But do not worry, because she will sleep so soundly that she will not notice your absence.
Aha, have you given her a special anesthetic?
It does not concern an anesthetic, but rather a naturally induced deep sleep.
The why of that would probably be asking too much, right?
It would take too long, for we have many other and more important things to do.
Of course. But what should happen now if I am not back at the time? Because then there will be a nice argument with my dear wife. If she wakes up and I am no longer lying in bed and also cannot be found, then something will happen.
You worry for nothing. She will not wake up before you are back. But in addition, as we have discussed, we will skip over time.
That you said, but in the end I will become an old man through this.
It should not become the rule.
Good, well, I am also not afraid of aging. But how long should the journey last then?
We have calculated 2 days for it.
Then once again, you will probably feed me with the stuff that does not let me sleep, right? This let us one's life start well and last a little longer. It creates, so to speak, a balance for the 2 days, whereby I become older in this deal.
It is not like that because we have procured earthly food for you. Otherwise, you would stay awake for too long.
So that means that I must occupy 2 days with a sleep deficit?
Sure, but you are indeed used to such.
You say that very easily. In the end, I am not getting any younger. Then I will certainly wander around sleepy again like a tramp. Well, what should happen now?
First, I would like to make you familiar with this new device.
This is another scanning device for taking photographs, yes?
Certainly, I have allowed it to be made according to Asket's information. It will be a better help to you than the first device.
Let's hope so. But by the way, Asket, she still owes me the transmissions. You know, the ones that I have misplaced or lost. When can she give me these?
That will happen at the beginning of next year.
Aha, then there will again be much work. The last time it was indeed a bit dull. Also, Erhat Athersata has not signaled itself.
You do indeed know that I am currently very busy elsewhere. But on the other hand, your strength was so used up by us, Arahat Athersata and Patah Li, that we must award you a recovery.
Now, however, you make me laugh. I can already endure a lot.
I do not doubt that, but you should not have to exhaust your last reserves. It is enough that, for many long years, you have given more and demanded more of yourself than all that was good for you. You often overexploited your strength and more than just exhausted yourself. Another Earth human would have broken from it and would have lost his or her life.
One must, after all, still do something for his task. Besides, playing the soft man does not help anything. Thus, I do not understand your sentimental outburst.
You are now more important than ever, for you still have a lot of work to do. This should be divided, however, according to your strength, so that you do not fall prey to exhaustion. This has nothing to do with sentimentality.
You really make me grin. I am really no weakling.
Sure, and also no one can say that of you. You are very often just too hard on yourself. And exactly because of this, you must leave it to us as to how much work we can burden you with. Thus, I also know that you only ever thoughtfully expressed yourself about the work imposed on you as a result of your concerns that you could not fulfill your task, for you always wanted to do everything extremely well. However, we have never burdened you any more than what seemed possible to us, even if we had to use up a lot of your strength by this. But now you really need some rest so that you can recover. We are truly able to judge this better.
Then I must indeed dance to the music that is played for me.
Sure, you will not be able to do anything else. But now, first of all, try out the new device. Meanwhile, I will bring my ship into space.
Sim Yase moves her ship high above the Earth, and I occupy myself with the new scanning device for photographing.
I have understood the thing.
That should not be hard for you.
No. But how does it stand now with the dimension gate in the Devil's Triangle? Can one see this?
With eyes alone, it is not recognizable, but it is possible to make the radiation visible.
You mean that...
Sure, I can make the radiation visible by my ship. Only 2 paths of radiation are currently recognizable from this side of the Earth, however, while the third is behind the Earth, and, therefore, cannot be seen from here.
Then fiddle around with your devices at once. Can I also photograph this then?
Sure, but you will see a lot more things than what you are now normally able to recognize.
Will I see that then on a screen?
No, you may recognize it through the viewing window because the visibility of the radiation occurs through a radiation shield that is spread out by the entire ship. Pay close attention now to the Earth.
Girl, that is fantastic. I actually see 2 enormous paths of radiation. But in addition, there are still many balls and other things all around the Earth. What are these?
Those are concentrations of energy of the most diverse types and strengths. They orbit the Earth at irregular distances and intervals and are very important for the existence capability of the earthly life forms. I may not explain more about that.
Very well, then I will take a quick photo. So I have it. What now?
We still have to wait some time.
What for?
For Father, because you do indeed know that without his ship, we would not be able to return to this time anymore.
Of course, you already said that earlier. But how long will it take then?
I do not know exactly, but it will take some time.
Then I can, indeed, unpack my artillery.
You have brought your weapons?
Of course, what do you think? If a dinosaur wants to say good afternoon to me, then I must be able to greet him, but decently, if his greeting should be a bit rude.
Sure, but you have a somewhat strange sense of humor. It is good that you have armed yourself because you certainly know how to handle your weapons better than ours.
It is good that you have brought them along.
But I just do not understand why you have no fear at all, for such animals can get very angry.
We shall see. I will, in any case, try to fondle a dear little animal's chin.
I cannot allow that.
You will see, for I am quite cheeky. I certainly will not ask you beforehand, for even though I am your guest, that does not mean I am just going to.
You might be right. You Earth humans still have certain characteristics that are no longer peculiar to our race.
What characteristics do you mean with that?
You call it sense of adventure.
I have always been an adventurous fellow.
You really have a special nature.
That is possible. But now, I have a question for you. What actually happened with the 2 drawings that you promised me regarding the Zeta Reticuli intelligences?
Unfortunately, I could not make these for you. The permission for it was not granted to me. I acted somewhat hastily with my promise.
That is not so bad. Something like that can happen sometimes. But may I perhaps ask why?
In order to be able to make the pictures correctly, I would have had to draw certain details from which insights for the earthly scientists would have arisen, which they are not yet permitted to obtain.
I understand. But since we are already talking about drawing, I would be interested to know what the dear God actually looks like or looked like.
Of which one are you thinking?
Of the great Ishwish, who still wanders like a ghost today through the Christian religion.
There are 2 of those.
2?
Sure.
I do not understand that.
Why do you speak an untruth?
Huh?
You know the circumstances very well.
Well then, since you know about that, I mean the old dear god, Ishwish the Barbarian, as I have christened him, or the Lord Jehovah, as he was commonly called.
Thus the one of the old time or Moses's time.
Exactly. I mean the superhero, that ambivalent subject who, on the one hand, proclaimed himself as the creation and boastfully spoke of universal love, mercy, and justice, but who, on the other hand, heedlessly demanded innocent human blood and allowed millions of Earth humans to be brutally slaughtered at his command.
That is a very accurate statement. His image is known to me very well. You call him the biblical God, but with us he is called the unjust and cruel one. He came to his end approximately 2 years ago. He was a very malicious and power-hungry life form who led his regime together with another and good Ishwish and drove countless Earth humans to death and destruction.
And to whom today's Christianity still pays hellish tribute.
Sure, unfortunately, that is so, for his malignant influence was enormous.
That is well known to me. But how would it be now if you would draw this super twit for me? Do you still have my paper and pencils?
Sure, but you speak very disparagingly of Jehovah.
Should I still pay homage to him then? After all, he is the most to blame for the fact that we on the Earth live in the insanity of his cultic religion, and that millions of innocent Earth humans were murdered on his account. Should I heap praise then on this twit just for this?
You should not do that, for he was evil and unjust. Only a distant descendant was just. I only wanted to hear how you stand with him.
All right, but you do indeed know my opinion. Your question was therefore pointless. Emmanuel only spoke of a god in his present time and of earlier gods, but never of Ishwish the Barbarian.
The unjust or cruel one.
All right, then I will just call the guy after your designations. But can you now draw the fellow for me? Is there still enough time for this?
Sure.
Good. Then I will take a somewhat closer look at your ship, if you do not have anything against it. If the thing zooms off, then you will just have to interrupt the drawing and bring the mill back on course.
You have planned a few things, yes?
Exactly. I have always wanted to see if I can circle such a thing around myself. I have always watched you closely, and now know a bit about the control and the initial startup of the drive. If you have nothing against it, then I will play around with it a little.
You are really good. You actually mean your words seriously.
Did you think then that I was joking?
I truly assumed so.
Well, then you now know that it is no joke. Now, quietly get going with the drawing. I will only circle around the Earth a few times, so... You see, the mill is already zooming off, so now a little more steam and...
Arimo, Arimo.
What do you mean?
Halt, I said. Halt, halt.
I did not understand that. So the mill stands. What is wrong then?
Sorry. Of course you could not understand me. I got excited and thus spoke in my native language.
Aha, so Arimo means stop.
No, it means halt. That is the difference.
But what is the matter then? Do you have something against it if I properly bring the box up to speed once, or if I let it circle around at all? You could have, nevertheless, said that directly.
I have nothing to object to that, because I have already known for a long time that you have endeavored to be able to fly the ship once. And I also know very well that you can do it. But did you pay attention to the speed just now?
Of course, it was just less than 290 kilometers per hour. I did not want to grind the mill any further because of the time and so on. You even said yourself that it is very dangerous if one exceeds the speed of light with the normal drive or simply at all, without diving, at the same time, into hyperspace.
Sure. You actually kept that in mind?
Should I lie to you then?
To me, that would be something completely foreign of you. Sorry, I needlessly excited myself. I felt as though you had not considered the facts regarding the speed. But that obviously is not so, as you say. You can steer my ship calmly if you like. But please pay attention here. If you should lose control, then simply press these 3 contact points in the grid. By these, everything turns to the 0 position, and the automatic control mechanism regulates everything within a split second. Thus, no dangers can appear. But despite everything, please pay attention to the speed.
Done, girl, so have no fear.
Good, then now I will devote myself to the drawing.
That is nice. Then I will have another go.
But please note my instruction.
Of course. Nevertheless, do not worry all the time. I certainly do not act carelessly.
I will probably never understand your kind, but you Earth humans are all a bit strange in this manner.
You mean because of the sense of adventure and such?
Sure, it is something completely foreign to me.
We earthworms are, after all, still a type of ancient swashbuckler. At least some of us. The unknown simply beckons us, and the harder life hits us, the more we can enjoy it. I will teach you this all right, perhaps when we shake a dinosaur's paw.
May reason keep me from that.
You see, that is exactly what you have to turn off, for it inhibits everything in such matters, because it generates anxiety. Reason tells you that a dinosaur is an evil beast, but the intellect says that the little creature only acts crazy when it feels excited. Thus, if we shake its paw quite peacefully, then it will start to be happy, but not to turn around.
I do not understand your humor.
My words are meant seriously. Look, your reason tells you or told you that I could rev up your mill over the speed of light, which is why you also got excited. After my explanation, however, you calmed yourself down, for your intellect taught you through my explanation that you do not need to be afraid, because I really took into account the factor that caused you anxiety. This means, then, that you have to see the facts exactly as they actually are. Of course, you can also be mistaken once, and then the salad is simply baked and everything is in the vinegar. Besides, what are 290 kilometers per hour? Because that is just a pittance compared to the speed of light, which is around 300 kilometers per second.
You say that so easily, but I cannot deny you the logic in it. Maybe I do actually let myself be guided too much by reason in certain things, without considering at the same time the intellectual concerns in a proper measure.
Certainly, but these wise sayings also were not cultivated in my own field. Svath already taught them to me, namely when I was still a boy.
Nevertheless, you are more developed in them and in their observance than I am. It may well be because of our high level of development that we have a different nature in such concerns. With certainty, our somewhat finer dimension also exerts a certain influence on it. Sometime I will have to talk with my people about it because I think that a different forming in these things would be of use for us.
So you therefore suddenly believe?
You split my words. You know their meaning very well.
Of course. I was just surprised that you have already sunk so much into our manner of speaking. On the other hand, I am also surprised that you suddenly speak so openly of your finer dimension, for you yourself have forbidden me from doing this up to now.
My explanation still gives no further clues.
That is right, therefore let us leave that. So let us continue. You draw, and I try to convert the mill into scrap metal.
If you, at the same time, leave the earth out of play.
Huh?
Ha 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 ha.
Ah, I understand. You switch very quickly. But I am extremely glad that you strive for the manner of us earthworms.
It is much easier than I had assumed.
But now, let us actually do this.
It takes minutes before Simyase is finished with her drawing, and during that time, I wildly circle around with the ship, but unfortunately, only around the Earth and the Moon, which to me are things that are always in the way.
Here you have your Ishwish, Jehovah.
So that is this special hero. This fellow just does not look friendly.
That is quite correct.
It was probably the best solution, that he was deposed by force.
Sure.
If there is still enough time, I still have a few questions.
Just ask. There is still enough time at our disposal.
Good. I have been occupied with some of the things that you transmitted to me with the last contact. Essentially, it concerns the contactees. You named of these for me. For another 3, you said that for certain reasons, you were not allowed to speak of them yet, so therefore...
Because first, several facts still have to be clarified.
Nice and good. But it still does not make sense to me that only these or should be the only ones who actually had or have contact with extraterrestrials.
I explained to you, nevertheless, that I only named for you those who are not of very great importance. CR 39, Image 1. JPG IHWWH Jehovah, drawn by Simya Say on Wednesday, 3rd December, 1975. Besides these, however, there are still some other Earth humans who had and still have contact with extraterrestrials. However, their significance is even less important, whereby I address their mediocrity of tasks. But with this, you must not take it that no significance at all may be ascribed to them, for that truly is not so. They also form a part of the whole, but only in a much smaller form than the ones mentioned to you by name. In addition, there are even scientists, authors, and filmmakers who must be designated as contactees, for they are influenced by us and others through telepathic impulses in order to be serviceable toward progress and enlightenment.
Aha, so that means that among the few, true, officially known contactees, there are still at least some who must be designated as real contact persons.
Sure, there are even very many of these according to your concepts, but they are not of very great importance, such as those named by me in particular, through whom certain things had to be done and be invented, or who served, or should have served for the Enlightenment, in regards to the existence of extraterrestrial human life, but which, unfortunately, was not and is not always the case.
That is finally a bit clearer. Thus, your words mean that we may not interpret your remarks about few contact persons in such a way that only the or named by you are genuine.
Sure, there are even several other but not officially known contact persons, or, more exactly said, a few thousand, but their significance is very low. Of somewhat greater significance are only of those. And to be sure, you are not yet named, however, for you have an extremely great task and responsibility through self-determination, and you are also the only one who has physical and fully conscious contact with us.
It is really becoming crazy with you, as you cannot be a little more specific. Must you always first provide only partial information, then? In this manner, we can come to wrong views.
That was never in my mind.
I know, you probably thought that we could become clever from your information and piece everything together ourselves. But that actually was not so.
I am very sorry. Unfortunately, I often have very great trouble adapting myself into your stage of thinking. But in the future, I will increasingly try to avoid misunderstandings. Thus, I would like to give you the data regarding the contact persons again in order to eliminate all misunderstandings. Earthly contact persons of not very great importance are those whom I named for you in particular. In addition, however, there are 3 other important human beings whose names I am not allowed to announce to you yet. Besides these, you are to be named as the most important factor of all, for you have to fulfill the mission of the delivery of the spiritual teaching, which is why you were already prepared since your earliest childhood for your prophethood. In addition, there are still somewhat more than 17 Earth humans who, completely unconsciously, stand in impulse telepathic connection with extraterrestrial intelligences. Of these, there are a few thousand who are known in smaller or larger circles and groups for the fact that they maintain, out of suppositions, but they are not certain of these, to stand or to have stood in contact with extraterrestrial life forms. These, however, are not known to the world public but only in private circles. Besides these, there are still thousands of other human beings to be mentioned, who have become known to the world public for the fact that they have come into visual contact through observations of aircraft of extraterrestrial life forms and can still partly continue such contacts because they are attentive sky observers. Many thousands of these, who have not been named in particular, live in the countries of Germany, Austria, Poland, Russia, China, Australia, New Zealand, America, South America, Spain, France, Italy, and Switzerland, etc. In addition, such visual contact persons are to be found in all other countries of the world, and indeed, without any exception. Of these thousands of visual contactees who are not well known to the public, however, there are only who have achieved a somewhat greater significance in relation to becoming publicized. This excludes, however, all those who stand in fellowship with the Giza intelligences. We do not count these among the real contactees.
Man, girl, this now looks a bit different than what we previously thought in general. So accordingly, in spite of everything, many of those named in books and newspapers, etc., belong to the actual contactees. This gives a somewhat different picture to everything because we did not know that you also designate human beings as contactees who simply had and have sightings with regard to beam ships.
I am very sorry if I gave my information unclearly.
It is all right, Simyase. It is actually also our fault. We sometimes just do not think far enough. It probably would have been better if I had tried to get all names of UFO contactees, in order then to ask you about the genuineness of the names. In particular, you did indeed tell me that Adamski was not a contactee, as well as not Michalek or the South African Elizabeth Clarer. But recently I have heard of another name, a certain Menkure or Menger or something like that. What about this one?
Menger, he is not a contactee. His statements and remarks correspond to a deliberate product of his imagination.
That is clear and plain. Sometime, may I bring you a list of all names that I can get to know?
Sure, I will then name the real contact persons for you.
Thanks, Simyase. That will be very valuable for us. But now, I would still be grateful to you if you would give me the exact data of the contact persons, I mean numerically, by degree of their importance. Is that possible for you?
Sure, but you already received these data from my father at an earlier time.
I know, but I would like to have them in a little more detail, with more precise explanations. Thus, we will finally have very exact clarity.
As you wish. Since your discussion with my father, the number of contact persons has increased by a few. At that time, there were 17 Earth humans, while today, the number to be mentioned is 17,118. So,
You really have fantastic concepts in the manner of your measure. The increase amounts to nearly human beings, and yet you speak of a few of these.
nevertheless, it is only an increase of 296.
Of course, but really only?
I do not understand you.
You are really good, as more human beings is still a rather nice amount. Thus, one cannot really speak any more of only a few. But now, please mention the data to me in a table fashion, and also tell me how many Earth humans have already seen UFOs, if you know this information.
We no longer maintain inspection over that because it became unimportant and too extensive. Therefore, I cannot give you exact details. The number of observers or visual contactees should already be approaching the first 1,000,000,000 mark.
That is nearly a third of humanity.
Sure, but only a small part of this mass accepts the reality of the sighted objects. But now, Pay attention to my exact details. 17. Earth humans currently stand in impulse telepathic connection with extraterrestrial life forms of the most diverse kinds, but they are completely unaware of this. Earth humans had involuntary or purely accidental, one-time contact with extraterrestrial life forms since the year 9 BC. These contacts are of no importance, for they were not connected with any tasks. Only very few exceptions of these are or were of slight importance in the public life. Of the 17, contact persons have a half-important significance in the fulfillment of certain tasks in reference to the clarification with respect to their sightings. A small number of these Earth humans were and are known to the world public as visual contactees. Of the 17 contact persons had a greater significance in the fulfillment of certain tasks. Of these, however, only very few were known as contact persons, and all of them have already passed from your world. One of the 17 contact persons is of sole, utmost importance in the fulfillment of a prophethood. Earth humans are contact persons of the Giza intelligences. These, however, are not counted among the real contact persons. Of these, Giza contact persons have come to the public worldwide. At present, Earth humans fraudulently call themselves UFO contact persons, even though they never had contacts to record. 7 of these fraudulent Earth humans have become known worldwide as very important contact persons by their fraudulent reports. Of these fraudulent Earth humans have likewise become known worldwide by their fraudulent reports, but with much less significance than the first 7. This is the most exact information that I can give you at the moment, and that corresponds to the present conditions.
With that, I am very satisfied, for this information is now really very clear. In a similar context, however, I would now be interested to know how it is with the other world contactees and recipients of messages from the highest levels. You once said earlier that the real ones of these were also only very few.
Sure, that is so. But at the same time, I only spoke of really high levels and the highest intelligences. No earthly contact persons are to be found who maintain contact with higher or lower or parallel otherworldly beings. The number of these people, however, who could actually enter into connection with human beings of other dimensions is only to be reckoned as of these all over the world, but these do not use their capabilities.
That is an exact number, but how can you tell this?
It is a requirement for us to know these matters, thus we must investigate them.
How large, then, is the number of those Earth humans who want to enter into connection with lower spirit forms, and other worldly ones, etc., and who try this, even though this is impossible?
It is impossible for us to investigate that, but on the other hand, it also is not of importance to us. Only important to us are those who could enter into connection with other dimensioned human forms.
But still, can you mention an approximate number?
That is not possible for me, but nevertheless, there are many millions. However, these imagined connections are completely worthless and without any meaning. Only those mentioned are of value, along with the connections in the Earth humans' WE collective subconsciousness level. These data, however, are rather inconsistent because they rise or fall almost daily. This occurs through deaths and new appearances. Concerning it was still the case a few months ago that there were only very few of these who could be counted on one hand. But it is not just the deaths that make these numbers waver, because a very great influence is also exerted on them by fluctuating radiations and movements of consciousness.
What am I to understand by the WE subconsciousness level?
It concerns subconsciousness connections to the WE form of the Earth humans, and Therewith, to same-dimensioned life forms in this world's area, who stand in no wise higher in their evolution than the connection-seeking Earth humans themselves. Thus, they cannot convey or obtain any translated or higher knowledge in collective subconsciousness.
Thus, they are not higher life forms that have an enormously high consciousness knowledge or spiritual knowledge?
You have grasped it very well. These forms are ones that are in no wise advanced from the average Earth human by many years into the future. For in this case, the WE collective form is indeed based on the WE subconsciousness form of the existing Earth humanity.
So accordingly, it is all still valuable in a certain sense?
Sure. But on the other hand, the millions of pointless attempts to connect to otherworldly forms are nonsensical and completely useless, and sometimes even dangerous. For such pursuers still belong to very low levels of consciousness and cognition, and are still of very low intelligence.
If I understand correctly, is this special WE subconsciousness level also responsible for the fact that erroneous religious teachings become represented?
You think correctly. But often, which must also be said, these connections are only imagined or even deliberately deceptive and non-existent.
That would lead too far again. Maybe one should write a whole book about that sometime. But how long will it be until we can get going?
You must still have some more patience. My father is very far away.
He will not be here for about 30 minutes.
Then we can still talk some more. I have enough questions in stock. Something is just a bit fishy to me with this journey, namely the time. I am now already about 2 hours away from home, and I should still stay away for another 2 days. At the same time, I simply do not understand how one would not notice my absence. This is something that just does not make any sense to me. These time shifts quite simply go beyond my spiritual horizon. These little time cramps really do not make me any wiser. I understand what really happens, but how everything is connected together, this is a sevenfold mystery to me.
Accept my consolation, because I do not understand any more than you. Even our best scientists know only very few secrets of these matters. They do indeed know the how, when, and where, etc., but they do not know the basic causes of the process. Therefore, do not think about it too much, for it would be pointless. I can, however, explain to you what happens in order for you to be able to have 2 days with us. It is the simplest possibility for us. You will be with us for 2 days, while on Earth, only 2 hours will pass. These 2 hours, however, are only the length of time that you needed to come to the contact place, arrive here with me, and then go home again.
But these 2 hours are, nevertheless, already over and are even exceeded by more than about minutes.
Sure, I just wanted to explain that to you. Your way from your house to the contact place, our greeting and the flight here lasted only minutes. You will also need this time for the return. Besides this, what you do not know is that on the flight here from Earth, I leaped about 2 days into the past. You do indeed know how easy this is. Hence,
Girl, now I understand.
you do not understand, because we have not done a normal leap into the past. It is a time shift that is still unknown to you. You now live twice, namely once here and once down there on the Earth.
Now I really do not understand.
Understand yet, we do indeed live here at present, but we are at the same time 2 days in the past. For us, it is now indeed Wednesday, but on Earth it is now only Monday.
I really do not understand. According to your statement, I would now have to be down there on Earth and would be going straight to bed, because on Monday I did not go to bed until morning. So we are now having Monday there on the Earth, as you say. Nevertheless, I am here and thus am not climbing into bed. This is therefore not clear.
You understand everything very well. You just do not want to accept it because you find it too fantastic.
Well, you claim then that I am here in my normal present and, at the same time, 2 days in the past. I already lived these 2 past days on the earth below, as seen from my present. But since I am now moved 2 days back, I should first start to live these 2 days down there. Or rather, live through them. While I will, in reality, first live through these 2 days with you yet. This is nevertheless crazy. Now, according to your statement, I would actually have to exist twice, namely down there on Earth, where I am going straight to bed, and once here. Thus, I could now visit myself down there, eh?
Sure, if we would now return to the Earth, then you could, theoretically or practically, depending on the case, talk with yourself.
Aha, I could therefore go to my own front door and knock until the door would be opened for me. And who would open for me, eh? I for myself, in my own person. Man, girl, I would just like to see my dumb face once, when I suddenly stand before me and even say hello to myself. At the same time, it just does not make sense to me that in the normal time, only 2 hours pass, while the past requires 2 days for it.
That is regulated by a time manipulation.
I understand. One of those accursed theories of relativity, which are no longer theories for you. Just listen to me, girl. Let these explanations be, for I am too dumb to understand it. My head is already smoking.
As you wish, but maybe you do, nevertheless, want to visit yourself in the past sometime?
I still want to consider that first, although it excites me to see my own dumb face before me and even talk with myself once. But now, a question has been burning on my tongue for a long time. It is just that I have forgotten it again and again. I know from Ask It and you that of the extraterrestrials visiting the Earth are purely human-like, human life forms, albeit with some deviations from our appearance. Through Ask It, I have also seen various such intelligences outside of and far away from the Earth, such that were rather gigantic in stature and reached more than 4.5 meters, while the smallest dwarfs and short ones were tall. But they were all really recognizable human forms. Some looked like Yetis, others like Cyclopes, miniature Goliaths, etc. 2 forms, which I have also never seen on the Earth, were completely different, however. So there were 2 forms that belong to the remaining, and are non-human, but still human beings. My question now is whether you can perhaps make me a list of pictures sometime with the corresponding forms of all these beings that visit the Earth, or that previously visited it.
That is right. For they are, despite their more animalistic appearance and non-humanity, human beings. Making drawings, however, will not be necessary, for in the near future, you will otherwise come into possession of such a list. To be sure, it will not be complete, but for the rest, I might be allowed to try to transmit to you picture drawings of the remaining life forms. You will, indeed, have to have a little more patience for this. Nevertheless, I cannot say whether I will be permitted to make such drawings.
That is fine. Then I will leave the rest of the paper and pencils here for you.
That is not necessary because I will transmit the drawing forms to you directly and guide your hand during the making, if I am allowed.
Then I should draw these?
That is not quite right. You are, so to speak, only the implementing tool.
Aha, so something the same or similar as with Patahli.
Sure, it is the same form.
Then it will work out all right. I already have experience in that. But from where, then, should I receive the list that you mentioned?
You will learn that soon enough. I do not want to talk about it. Everything will be a great and very good surprise for you. Nevertheless, I told you some time ago that you will now have many important contacts with Earth humans.
That you said, but I have not noticed much of that yet.
I do not lie to you. You will really recognize the truth of my words soon enough.
I was not speaking of lying, But do you really not want to say who will give me a suitable list of the mentioned life forms?
It should be a joyful surprise for you. I told you that, nevertheless.
Then just let it be, you secretive person.
You really try in vain.
Well, then I have another question. Can you tell me how many extraterrestrials of a good form had contact with Earth humans since ages ago?
I have already expected this question from you for a long time, which is why I also strove for the necessary data. Your question really was to be foreseen for a long time. Very many extraterrestrial intelligences came to the Earth from the entire expanse of the Milky Way for thousands of years. For several centuries, however, there have only been very few, and only a few of these tried to pursue communications with the Earth humans or even come into closer contact with these. Mainly, the only ones who did so were those who were interested in showing new and better or simply future ways to the human beings of Earth. On the whole, these intelligences were very distant descendants of your indirect ancestors, and only in very rare cases were these different forms of life, but they were still, to a large degree, of a human-like, human form. I can say the exact answer to your question, but with the fact that of all the extraterrestrial visitors to the Earth, only 0 of those entered into contact with Earth humans. Excluded from these are those who traveled from afar, from the depths of the universe, who became resident on the Earth in ages past, and who entered into the earthly history of humankind.
That is not exactly a lot. But now I have a question that has already occupied me for a long time, namely regarding a statement of the Christian Bible. There is talk there of an anti-time or something like that. When, then, should this time come?
This is the prophesied anti-time, or the time of the Antichrist, which is falsely laid out in the Christian Bible, in which the Earth human will free himself or herself from the religious delusion and turn back to the truth. This time is connected to the cosmic age of Aquarius, and the anti-time has already begun with the passage of the first half into the second half of the transitional period, namely exactly at 11 HR's GMT on the 3rd of February 1937.
That would be, therefore, the time of catastrophic confusions, of the churches and other religions' mass murders, and of the political and religious wars, of the degeneration of human beings and otherwise all evils of the last centuries, and the coming time of catastrophes, etc., which were prophesied by the old prophets and also by Emmanuel.
Sure, it is just that they still have not found their completion, because the most severe events are yet to come. And to be sure, sectarian murders and mass suicides, as well as religious, murderous riots, neo-Nazi terror, and other terror through right-wing and left-wing radical elements and groups. But in the future, natural disasters will also take the upper hand in a degenerate form, and indeed, not in the least by the fault of Earth humanity. Revolutions and wars will also take the upper hand in menacing measures.
Then it can still become quite cheerful. Will the atomic blockheads still chuck their firecrackers on their heads?
That danger should be averted, at least for now, and according to the probability calculations, that should still be able to be excluded at least up into the 3rd millennium. The values are at 99.8%. Therefore, only an erupting madness of a ruling power or the inattentiveness of human beings could trigger a nuclear war.
So this means that for now, there's no reason to fear a nuclear war anymore?
Sure, if you are thinking of an actual world war.
Then humanity can indeed be calmed, at least for the next 2 or 3 decades.
Sure, because such a war could really only be attributed to an erupting madness or inattentiveness. The probability calculations show this with the highest values.
On which one can rely?
With complete certainty.
It is reassuring to know that, maybe now, those in different houses will sleep a little more peacefully. Another question, however, was recently brought to me, with which I cannot do much with. Wait, yes, I have written it here on this slip of paper. What's with Mount Shasta? This is a mountain or a large hill somewhere, on which mysterious things are supposed to happen. What is it all about?
Mount Shasta is an old volcanic mountain with a partially still unexplored area in America, or more precisely, in Northern California. The mountain is very rocky and extremely difficult to climb. In the interior of the mountain itself is a small city, which is inhabited by descendants of extraterrestrials and which, here and there, also receives a visit from their space brothers from outer space. It is a very majestic race, peaceful and good, but which anxiously strives not to be discovered by Earth humans. The entrance to their very deeply underground city is well camouflaged under the eastern mountain peak, and it is impossible for Earth humans to find it. But if Earth humans are ever found in their proximity, then they are made imperceptibly unable to move or distracted by the beam weapons that most of the city dwellers carry on themselves for security reasons. Their golden spaceships of a spherical form, for they master spaceflight, can sometimes be seen when they do not protect these from view. Human beings of this race are very well proportioned in their appearance. Their hair is mostly natural blonde, long and curly, which is very fit for their graceful Hyperborean nature. Sometimes, despite their shyness of Earth humans, they go into their villages to conduct unrecognized bartering with them, after which they depart and flee in a great hurry, however, if Earth humans come too close to them. But Mount Shasta is not the only place where this race lives, for already at very early times they divided themselves into 3 smaller peoples, with the other 2 living unrecognized and deep underground on the Aleutian Islands and in Alaska. The whole population amounts to just about human beings.
That is fantastically interesting, and now a few things dawn on me. But you have just said something about their appearance, from which I could infer that with this race living underground, it concerns very distant descendants of the real Hyperboreans.
You infer correctly.
Menniken? That is fabulous. Then they would be descendants or distant descendants of those who carried out the actual decolonization 180 or 190 years ago, in the form that can then be regarded as the prehistory of today's human race, at least for the white race. Among them, then, must have also been the Ishwish who gave Enoch great wisdom. Methuselah went to this one in a later incarnation of Enoch, and Noah was later commissioned by this one's guardian angels to build that ark, with which he actually landed then on Ararat.
Sure, except that the event, with the building of the ark, which Noah himself did not build, and with his family and with the animals and everything else, became so falsified that no current information agrees with the truth anymore. The events with the ark did truly take place, but at another time, 90 years later.
I know that very well, and in these falsified assertions, the boundless stupidity and lack of education of the scribes inevitably comes to full expression. For how else could they have written in their fantasy story that Ararat is the highest mountain in the world? And on the other hand, how, for example, could elephants as well as mammoths, which were still there at that time, rhinoceroses and all other 4-legged animals, etc., have climbed down from Ararat? I happen to know the mountain very well, and know that even a good mountain climber has lots of distress and trouble when wanting to conquer the mountain.
Not all Earth humans think logically and with a sharp mind. Many also live in some belief of an unreal religion, which forbids them to reflect upon and investigate such matters. On the other hand, you also have to consider that you have traveled very far, and you have considered everything very precisely. As I know, you have traveled countries of the earth and have tirelessly been in investigations. So you have, also with our assistance, experienced and found many more things than what the best archaeologists and other scientists of the Earth have ever managed to do. Moreover, you have also traveled outer space and the Dal universe with us and have seen various foreign worlds and other life forms.
Maybe you are right, but I think that is a little too much glory for me. Tell me again, how long we still have to wait here?
We can depart from here in a few minutes.
Good. I would then still like to try to use my film camera to film a satellite, and the Earth, and maybe even the Moon.
You can do that, but not until we are back again. But then, for this, at least use the scanning device, and then fasten this light source to it firmly. The optics of your camera are not very bright, that is why.
As you wish. But then, can I also take pictures on the primeval world with this?
Sure.
That is good. If only I had more film. Even with the slide film, I am just not well covered. I still wanted to get some, but I no longer had enough money. Unfortunately, I am now financially, so to speak, where one whistles from the last hole. I am simply bankrupt, and I cannot even pay all the bills in the month of December.
I know your problem. You must still be a little patient, however, because there are things in motion that will help you. Your situation will still get worse, though, because in the middle of next year, you will have to seek another place of residence.
But why then?
Someone wants to do you harm and fears you, even one from the local authorities. And since the house, in which you live with your family, belongs to the local authority, it is not surprising that one will cancel your residential contract.
Nevertheless, I do no one any harm.
Certain people fear the truth, and they cannot cope with the fact that they are in the wrong. You have told them the truth, but they have not recognized the truth and have accused you of lying. And when now, however, they have had to learn that they themselves have fallen prey to untruth, which they are unable to cope with. They thought that they were very knowledgeable, and they suddenly had to realize that they are in the wrong, which they now want to deny, however. They fear, however, that you could make their stupidity evident, so they seek this path of self-protection. Because if you are sent to another place of residence, then, so they illogically think, you could not reveal their stupidity anymore.
In that, I also have no interest. But it had to come so far sometime. This was to be expected. After all.
Sure, but it is only good for you and your family. Ascot already told you in the year that toward the end of the year, your home life, etc., would adapt itself into calmer courses when you step into contact with those people from whom you will then purchase the building for sale, from which you then build up the center. This occurrence with another place of residence is only a part of what the future will bring you, in connection with the fulfillment of your mission.
Nice and good, but I cannot really live on that.
It will get better.
You can talk very nicely and easily, but for me, it can be quite uncomfortable. After all, I still have a wife and children. But I do not want to complain about that. I really just want to say that at present, it really looks a bit lousy with my finances. But somehow I must indeed deal with it.
That is certainly so, but on the other hand, you are somewhat too unworldly with regard to material values. You should strive for that which is entitled to you. You have to fulfill a very large task, which should serve the whole of humanity on Earth, but you should also be recompensed for it by your fellow human beings. You yourself should be concerned about that.
That is impossible. On the one hand, I am a hopeless anti-materialist, and on the other hand, I may not let myself be paid for my work in the manner that I sell my knowledge. Ultimately, one has taught me to fulfill my task and has educated me therein. But this really only happens so that I can fulfill my task, for it just has to be fulfilled. Therefore, how could I let myself be paid for it?
You degrade yourself. You know very well that you have not received very much that was simply taught. Rather, you often had to acquire the knowledge under mortal danger and even under very harsh conditions. But on the other hand, it is true that just your task is the most valuable, for which you must be appropriately recognized and recompensed. I know that you are a hopeless anti-materialist, but in your world you may not be in this form. Your world is built on materialism, and therefore you have to think in accordance with this, whether you like it or not.
Leave this. You know very well that I cannot do that.
Then, with regard to these concerns, you must set an administrator over you. Mr. Jacob in Wetsikon would probably be a very suitable man for that. He should take care of these concerns for you, and he should take care of your financial interests in all things. That is indeed also a part of his main occupation.
You really make me laugh, Simyase. I am nevertheless really no baby.
But in your interest, I would like him to take care of your concerns, because you have to be able to live.
Your wish is honorable, Simyase. But I am now an anti-materialist, and cannot just suddenly become a materialist.
I was not talking about that either, but about Mr. Jacob looking after your financial interests.
Very well, then he should if he wants. But now please leave me in peace with that. I really have never had so much drama around me because of money. Anyway, we better talk about something else. You just said something about the hair of the human beings in Mount Shasta, which reminds me of something very special. Here and there, that is a pair of scissors. Cute, eh?
That is, nevertheless, a working device.
Of course, it can also be called that. But do you know what such a thing is good for?
It is designed to cut materials.
Exactly. With this, one can even cut or trim away hair.
Sure, but what do you want with it?
Nothing less than to cut off a decent tuft of your hair, which we want to put in our display case as a memento of you, so to speak. You know, as something personal from you. We do not want to operate a cult with it. Here, I still have a piece of string to bind a decent bundle. You surely would not have anything against it, right?
You really have ideas sometimes, but if you think that it could be a pleasure for you...
Of course, then I may do so, yes? So please tie this bundle together for me. Just tighten it a little harder. The thread does not tear so quickly. Good. So, let us see. Aha, nice. That is a nice souvenir. Everyone will be happy about that.
Is it really enough?
Certainly, I do not want to give you a bald head.
Then let us go now.
Aha, then just zoom off. Ah, the mill is already running, but where is Ptah, then?
Just now he has changed over, but now look, there are the Bermudas.
The view from here is magnificent. Gosh, do you want us to drown in the sea?
I just want to go down close, so that I can demonstrate the transition to you, as it is also experienced by earthly pilots and crews of ships.
Oh, I see. Then just go ahead.
You really seem to have no nerves. Consider now that with this transition, it does not concern that which normally exists. This is the transition into the dimension of the threefold world. So this is a different dimension than that one, into which ships and airplanes penetrate.
What type of dimension, then, does it concern with the other one?
In that dimension, the world is already suspended in the distant future, but the inhabitants on the earth of that time very rarely penetrate from that.
So be it, girl. But, human child, we are already in the middle of the thing, and at the same time, one cannot see anything at all that would indicate a radiation or something. Girl, this is really fantastic. Wait. Yes, girl. Behind us, I see my own world, and there in front is something completely foreign, something wild and quaint.
We are now at the exact crossroads of the vortex. Thus, you can see both dimensions. In front of us is the primeval world, as I described it to you.
This is simply great. Will we now slip in completely?
We are already inside, as you see.
Those there ahead are now two of the worlds mentioned?
Sure, as I have described them to you.
Fantastic, simply fantastic, girl. There ahead, yes, is Ptah. Is he coming up again from the primeval world?
Surely, otherwise he would not have landed on the planet. But now we will go to him and leave my beam ship there.
Great, then we can poke around a bit in the world. Did you really make a protective suit for me?
Surely, and we also considered that you can move your arm in the suit in such a manner that you can use your camera.
And the film camera?
That would have made the suit much too bulky. But if you want to make a film here, then for now, I will still fly you around in the world with my ship. But then, for the photographs, you have to use the scanning device because we cannot step out without suits.
Done, then zoom off at once. I would like to capture some dinosaurs on film.
As you wish, but be sparing with the film since you only have a little, as you said.
Sim Yase talks with her father via a communication device. Then we investigate the planet, the primeval world, for about 2 hours in her beam ship. I can take various pictures of dinosaurs and the landscape before we travel to her father in his great spacer. During the 2-hour expedition flight, nothing of importance was mentioned, so Sim Yase finds this short conversation not worth transmitting. Explanation from the 8th of December, 1975. Already in the spaceship of Ptah after the greeting.
It is a pleasure for me to see you again.
The pleasure is all mine. But how is it with this? Sim Yase told me that we can do some walking on this primeval world.
That is right. We have had a suit made for you through which you can take photographs.
Sim Yase already told me that? I would also like, then, a photo of you and me in the suit.
I will do that.
You may not distribute my picture, however.
That is indeed a pity, but if you want it like that...
It must be, unfortunately, because I might still have to move on the Earth once in your time.
I understand. You do not want to be recognized.
That is so. It is a precautionary measure. But let us go now.
We let ourselves slide down through the transportation chute into the hangar, where we get into the protective suits. In Sim Yase's beam ship, we then glide out into the primeval world and move about it for a long time. At various places, we leave her ship, and I can capture some dinosaurs and landscapes on my slide film. Sim Yase partially paralyzes the large animals from her ship, in order to make the filming easier for me. The animals then stand petrified. Then, as promised, she also takes a photo of Ptah and me. After many hours, we go back into the Great Spacer.
That was a fantastic excursion.
No Earth human ever had that opportunity. Later, we will also show you the third world over there and also its moon. The world there is about years ahead of your time. Thus, the human beings are also accordingly developed in their technology and have their own beam ships, with which they arrive at your Earth every now and then. Even on their moon, they have established themselves and have built many stations. We will not visit the middle world because it is not important. There is indeed manifold life on it, and its oxygen content is very high, but you have already seen such world bodies during your great journey.
Can we not fly there immediately?
There are still various things to do, which we can do here.
You are once again quite mysterious.
It is no secret. We are searching here for an overdue beam ship of a life form known to us from our dimension. It penetrated a few days ago and has no possibilities for its own return.
How will you find it?
We have sent out several space analyzers in order to explore everything. We will know their results in 2 to 3 hours at the latest.
Then we have to stay here so long?
Sure.
Very well. It certainly will not get boring. Plus, I still have many questions.
You are untiring in that.
I am just interested in everything. Simya. Say announced to me at one of the earlier contacts that it should soon start again with the spiritual teaching. However, the good girl has not transmitted anything to me in relation to this. But on the other hand, it seems to me that she is concealing something from me.
My daughter really is a little mysterious sometimes. Concerning the spiritual teaching, she has also only given you partial information. The full fact is that the real spiritual teaching is not supposed to be transmitted by us, but rather from a very high spirit level, with which even we can only get in touch through the High Council, and that, in turn, only through Arahat Athersata.
That would indeed be the level of Patah Li, through which the 12 recommendations were given to us, right?
That is so. In the future, certain information for the spiritual teaching will be transmitted to you from this level, but you then have to prepare everything definitively. The 10 recommendations, or more precisely, the 12 recommendations, were the beginning of the transmissions. Since these transmissions demand exceptionally many powers from you, however, longer intervals must be kept from one transmission to another.
But other human beings can nevertheless also receive ongoing transmissions without being exhausted by it.
You know very well that this is not the case and that the majority of the so-called mediums truly have no contacts at all with such life forms or even other dimensioned life forms, and that some of them are just subject to a self-deception or are quite consciously and deceitfully led to believe such contacts. There are only very few real contacts with higher levels, and valuable transmissions are even rarer. But Earth humans, who could have actual contacts in this form with other life forms and higher spirit levels, would not just be able to pursue communication according to their liking, and indefinitely because their powers would be very strongly diminished by these contacts. So these would have to be renewed for every new contact, which would often take many weeks or even several months. They would never be able to bear such power achievements, as they are demanded of you, for they would surely die in complete exhaustion. You know why?
Of course, but your speech means that I will have to perform an enormous amount of work again, because with Patah Li, I have to write everything twice. I only receive the transmissions by hand. With the machine, it just does not work.
I know that, and it has its reasons. But through Quetzal's technical assistance, you can, indeed, write very quickly with your writing utensil, whereby you still have to omit many sentences and often also write the wrong words, etc., by which means the opposite of what is said and explained, etc., often results. Consequently, my daughter frequently has to sit down with you in order to make the necessary corrections, which you must then insert between the written lines. Unfortunately, everything is a bit complicated, so regrettably it cannot be arranged differently.
I can figure that out myself. Then I have to come to terms with the fact whether I like it or not. Another question that I still have in stock concerns something else entirely. I would gladly like to know what is with a certain Salvador Villanueva Medina, who has written a book about his contacts with extraterrestrials and his flights to other planets. I have received the book to read from Mr. K. Admittedly, I have not yet read it through completely.
You also should not strive further for that because all statements in this writing are freely invented.
That means that the man is a fraud?
In every sense, yes, even if he wants to serve a good purpose with it. Through various UFO reports, he has fallen to very strong fantasies, and moreover, has been very strongly influenced by Adamski. As one who wants to improve the world, with a certain hatred against the earthly human life forms, it was only an inevitable consequence for him to venture to the public with dishonest assertions in his work, which, by the way, was not written by him.
Oh, so that is it. But why then does he feel hatred in himself against the Earth humans?
On the one hand, because he is not able to reach any position of power. due to his minimal abilities in every respect, and on the other hand, because his own appearance depresses him, and he appears disproportionate to himself.
Then that would probably be the reason why he says in his book, with regard to the alleged two Frenchmen on the imaginary planet, that they were typically disproportionate and ugly Earth humans, right? Psychologically seen, I can at least find in this the reason for this description.
You think very sharply and precisely. The reason for his statement is actually to be found in that.
How could it be otherwise, but from his statement, which I find very derogatory for the Earth humans? The question arises as to what really is the case with this. By that, I mean, whether the Earth human is actually so disproportionate and ugly when compared to other life forms in the universe.
The Earth human is a descendant of a human form from the depths of the universe that is very highly developed in every manner. Accordingly, he or she is also highly developed in his or her proportional form. In this connection, he or she is on an equal footing with our own race, which is already approximately 1,000,000 years further developed. Even life forms that are still further developed have no better or more beautiful proportions, and even among them there are those whom the Earth human would describe as ugly. The proportional beauty of the Earth human was already recognized in ancient Greece, which is why the human beings surpassing this standard of beauty were called Adonis, good-looking ones. At that time, the Earth human was somewhat wild, so the real beauty was only recognized in a few, while those, through whom it was recognized, were called the beautiful ones, if I use the current Earth human terms for it. At the present time, however, since the Earth human has discarded his or her greatest wildness and consciously cares for their appearance, their given beauty comes to validity in its entire appearance. So today, in this regard, the majority of Earth humanity can be spoken of as Adonis forms. This refers to the Earth human's physiognomic, shape-related, and proportional appearance. The Earth human is one of the most well-proportioned and best-looking human life forms in the universe, who is only somewhat surpassed by his actual ancestors, who have reached the best possible perfection in proportional regard. The difference, however, is no longer very great, because the material form is subject to limits and cannot be extended.
Then the assertion of Villanueva is rubbish, so to speak, thus a somewhat underdeveloped spiritual stink bomb.
Certainly, if you like to put it like that.
So accordingly, there should be no so-called supernatural beauty, etc.
These are pronounced fantasies of uneducated Earth human life forms who want to make credible their fraudulent claims that they have made contact with extraterrestrials. In the whole universe, neither in this one nor in another, can the standard of beauty be exceeded, for it truly is limited. If this limit is exceeded, however, then a degeneration already takes place, and the life form in question must be described as ugly again, if I judge according to earthly concepts of beauty. Hence, there can also be no supernatural beauty, as you have mentioned this. Everything that is material is subject to certain limits that can never be exceeded. Only the imagination is able to exceed these limits, but without ever being able to realize it.
Nevertheless, Elizabeth Clarer, for example, has also stated that she encountered an extraterrestrial of supernatural beauty and even bore him a son. In addition, Adamski and various others spoke of unearthly or supernatural beauty.
Any rationally thinking Earth human can recognize the untruthfulness of their claims because only the imagination can produce such images. They are, however, nothing more than mirages which exhibit momentary fata morgana manifestations and then fade away again for good in the very next split second.
Then how do you classify the interpretation of Villanueva?
It is a world-improvable defamation of the Earth humans that is born from hatred.
So an insult to us earthworms?
That is so.
Then his philanthropy really is not fetched from afar.
It is only feigned and serves for the purpose of profit.
Then the case is indeed clear. There is something else, however, that you should explain for everyone for the interest of our cause, namely, the connections or certain connections with the age of the Earth human. I already know about these things because Svath informed me about them when I was a boy. Nevertheless, these things were never written down, so others are not oriented about them. I am referring to the fact that the thought powers of every single human being are capable of raising or lowering the life force of others.
Certainly, this question is of great importance, and I will give you information about that for everyone. The age of each life form is partially determined by the external forces penetrating into them of a cosmic as well as environmental and nutritional nature, etc., as well as by forces of other similar life forms, and to be sure, the genes play the predominant role. Since the thinking of a life form, through the cooperation of the spirit, generates an extremely logical, thus creation-based power that is released as high-frequency swinging waves and radiations, a tremendous force is thereby generated which is capable of influencing everything. This creation-based power penetrates into everything, truly into all material life forms and all matter, in order to influence them according to their type and form. Every life form has a lifespan in accordance with its genes and its level of life, including the human life forms of the earth. At the earliest times, when the human being of the earth was also produced by his or her indirect ancestors, his or her average age was reckoned at 1 year of life, for he or she, trained and informed by his or her progenitors, possessed an enormous level of knowledge and abilities. Unexpectedly quickly, however, they fell to the religions with their erroneous teachings and were thereby deprived of the true knowledge and the truth. They also necessarily began to work against all natural laws, became alienated to them, and lived in a recommendation-breaking and law-breaking manner. Everything together served for the loss of the high average lifespan, which fell lower and lower over the course of thousands of years and leveled off at a 20th of its earlier time. And indeed, especially because many different factors over many thousands of years negatively affected the life and also altered the genes. A turn for the better has only been apparent since the beginning of the new era, thus the average lifespan slowly rises again. The main reason for this is found in the recognition of the truth and in the positive evolution associated with it. Thus, the more the development direction turns to the truth again, the higher the average lifespan develops again, for through this, the altered genetic factors and all other life-supporting factors are also regulated again, which were badly impaired over the course of tens of thousands of years. The mass of Earth humans moving in consciously evolving forms is still relatively very low and is often only connected with the beginnings of the real truth. Thus, no major progress has been made yet. But the more the Earth human turns to the real truth and, with this, also towards evolution in all areas, and so also in reference to life extension, the more his or her average age of life rises again. Seen as a whole, however, every single life form is of most important significance, namely in its thinking and in the powers released from it. All thoughts radiate as tremendous forces and encounter the other life forms, which draw these towards themselves like magnets. Depending on the quality and whether they are negative, positive, or well-balanced, they produce powers of the same kind with corresponding effects in the life forms intercepting them. Positive powers produce positive powers, and accordingly negative powers produce negative powers, of course. Through the erroneous teachings and other deceptions of the religions, however, the Earth human, in the main, is able to deploy many powers that destructively influence all life forms. These destructions are based in the fact that they impair one's age as a result of erroneous teachings and wrong lifestyles, etc., so the average age lowers. The larger the gatherings of human beings are, such as in cities, the lower the average age falls. Because exactly at such places, immeasurable thought energies, in terms of wrong lifestyles, are released and unconsciously penetrate into fellow human beings. But also animals and many materials are impaired by these destructive forces of human irrationality and, thus, are left to an early destruction, like iron, for example, which normally never rusts as quickly as what is currently the case on Earth, and which only does so because the thought-based and idea-based produced progressions are destroying the atmosphere and environment. The most dangerous storehouses of wrong, humanly produced thought-swinging wave powers, however, are precious metals, precious stones, and crystals, which often accumulate these energies in deadly doses. Thus, an Earth human may make him or herself guilty in the death of a fellow human being, whether consciously or unconsciously, when they cultivate and maintain thoughts and feelings in a negatively degenerated form and thereby releases uncontrollable, destructive powers. If the Earth human wants to think and evolve correctly and in accordance with the creation, then he or she may neither move his or her thought forms in degenerated negative paths, nor in degenerated positive paths. For both are degeneracies that can produce very bad and negative consequences, thus they are contrary to the creation. Right thinking and evolving express themselves through a well-balanced and neutral wise of thinking and through right actions and right feelings, which then generate and send out identical forces through which life is produced and maintained, and an evolution that is truly appropriate for creation is followed.
That is very interesting. I just hope that your explanations are detailed enough, because all that is still very difficult to understand for the human beings of my world.
That is unfortunately so, as many Earth humans still strive far too little to be able to understand certain knowledge completely.
That is also often due to the fact that many human beings are much too overwhelmed with everyday worries.
That may very well be, but still, that does not entitle them to neglect the values of the spirit. In the entire universe, there are no life forms that do not have to do any consciousness-related work for their existence. Rather, they devote themselves to the valuable teaching of the Spirit. Work and worries are never an excuse for disregarding the given laws and recommendations. It just concerns a lack of effort because that which is material is considered more important.
It is indeed like that, Ptah. But human beings do not let themselves be convinced of that so easily. Hence, many also believe that everything has simply been placed into my lap through a benevolent foreordination, even though I had to learn a lot of things in addition to my daily work, just as every other human being must also do.
You are very sparing with your self-praise, and your speech is far from the truth. You should not constantly demean yourself, if only you would finally learn that. You speak very disparagingly of yourself and your achievements. Indeed, I am many centuries older than you, but I feel the highest esteem for you. However, I cannot approve your strong modesty because it does not correspond to your level. You are too modest, which is why you also cannot get along in your world in certain matters, and I am thinking of materialistic matters. It would be...
And now, even you are starting with that. Simya Se has already wiped me out with that.
But it would really be better for you and your family if you would just strive a little for materialism, which is now demanded in your world. You and your family must have what is necessary in order to be able to eke out a living. You cannot exist without a certain materialism.
Excuse me, Ptah, you are indeed a very wise man, quite apart from your age, but somehow you think wrongly. for I must.
Do you really want to teach me?
That is exactly what I want, even though it may not suit your plans.
You are upset.
I am. I admit that, for it.
Your agitation is incomprehensible to me. I am, nevertheless, just trying to help you and to revise your false notion. In my view, you act incorrectly, and you also know that very well. In your world, you cannot live without materialistic tendencies, no matter whether these tendencies are genuine or just imposed on you. But if you...
Now please, just listen to me very carefully, Ptah. I feel a whole lot of respect and esteem for you, and not just because of your age, which does not matter one bit to me. And whether you are now an Ishwish or not, also has nothing to do with the matter, because for me, titles are sound and smoke and are absolutely meaningless. My respect and esteem are based on totally different things, about which you can calmly believe me, and I have...
You speak very disrespectfully with my father.
Do not interrupt him. He should express his opinion.
Thanks, Ptah. I wanted to say, and I still have not ever met a human being to whom I could offer as much respect as I do to you. This was not even the case with Svath. But still, this does not mean that even you cannot be wrong once or cannot simply say rubbish, for you presumably do not know the exact background. Well, in your view, and in the view of Simya Se and all others known to me, I am a quite confounded anti-materialist. You are all absolutely right about that with certainty. That is why you all also constantly pick on me and try to rid me of my anti-materialism. You all actually believe that I could at least simply play around with a little bit of materialism, and you do not consider the danger that can arise from that. Consider once that, at that time almost years ago, Svath made hell for me because of damn materialism. He made me aware of the fact that a prophet, as you always flashily call me, can never do justice to his mission if he has fallen as much as a jot to materialism. I considered this very damn carefully at that time as a teenage boy and have, therefore, studied human beings thoroughly, and through this, I have ultimately come to realize that if I really want to fulfill my task, then I must truly be free of the smallest jot of materialism, for otherwise, I can never do justice to my task. I also recognized that only through the discarding of the last remnant of materialism would I, in turn, be able to give back property entrusted to me just as I received it. This, in turn, resulted in the recognition that materialism also has reference to words, speeches, and thoughts. Therefore, also words, speeches, and thoughts must be free of every little bit of materialism if one really wants to be an anti-materialist in sincerity. Hence, it is also absolutely impossible that I could simply play around with certain tendencies of materialism. Believe me, Ptah, it was not damn easy for me to renounce materialism in the manner that I am no longer even concerned for the good of my daily bread. I needed many years for this, almost 2 decades even. But I have done it. And only once I had achieved this did I also have the confidence that the slightest form of a materialistic approach could no longer throw me off course when I had to fulfill my task in the near future. This, in turn, was the assurance for me that through the removing of the last bit of materialism, I would also reflect every word said or otherwise conveyed to me very literally, as it has been entrusted to me. Through the removing of materialism, I have also become modest to an extent, and in the things in which modesty is necessary. This modesty also keeps me from changing even a single iota of a word according to my own sense or discretion, when a word is transmitted or said to me. I give it all back again so verbatim as I receive it, even if, because of this, I am often called a liar. Believe me, Ptah, it is really impossible for me even to play around with materialism, because this would endanger my task. Consider that from playing around, bad and bitter consequences come damn quickly, through which the best human being with the best intentions slowly but surely falls over and, one day, becomes just like he or she has played through a certain time. There is only a single means of defense against this, namely that one does not get involved in such a game under any circumstances. That would be irresponsible and bad. But on the other hand, my anti-materialism has become a conviction in me in such a stable form that it cannot be reversed anymore. Not even for a game, which also in turn means nothing other than to my own advantage. Even if you would offer me a huge treasure, by what means I could give up my anti-materialism, such an action would not be possible for me.
You make me think. I have never considered these things in this way. It seems to me that injustice has been done to you. It is strange, but I feel aching emotions in me for you. It is very strange, dear friend. Somehow it seems to me more and more often that you stand above me in many things.
It is very painful to me.
Leave this nonsense. Sentimentality is really out of place. Everyone, including you, wanted an earthworm who conscientiously fulfills a certain task to everyone's satisfaction. Well, I have been revamped and patched up for this, and perhaps I have also added a little more myself than I had assumed so. That might be right, good, but with that, the matter is really done.
That is not quite so, for these things were not considered by us. I am very sorry I was wrong with my comments, but it is an even greater joy for me that I was allowed to receive this instruction from you.
I am very sorry. My words earlier, which I...
Nevertheless, leave this nonsense. We are not in a sentimentality theater.
You violate your feelings.
You still just have to speak of feelings. You yourselves have always said that one must have these under control. And who has that now, eh? I, for one, cannot complain about that.
You are very harsh.
That is actually so.
One has taught me this.
You have learned this yourself because your school was inhumane.
That is nonsense. I am, in fact, still alive.
I really know this better than you because you only look at these issues from your perspective, and this is fundamentally different from the outermost acceptable standard of the Earth humans. I have, however, thought to myself about your explanations and have recognized that you think and act correctly. You bear a very great responsibility with regard to your task, which you truly are only able to fulfill if you move in your anti-materialism and in your relevant modesty. But this only became clear to me just now when you spoke in your agitation. My own comments were very inconsiderate. Still, you should not have to live in want. No work on the earth is currently as worthy of its wages as yours. Therefore, the Earth humans should give you your wage and feed you and your family and give you what is necessary.
I cannot demand that, Ptah, you know that. It just does not work.
I have not finished my explanation yet. I did not speak of the fact that you should do this. It should be a voluntary rendering of all those human beings who respect your work and find it worthy of its wages.
You make me laugh. You speak a very swollen language of open begging. But I am not a beggar, Ptah.
Your speech is illogical because voluntary rendering always occurs in sincerity for something good.
Still, it is a form of begging, except that it is just indirect. But I will not beg, damn it. And in the fulfillment of my task, I do not work to get rich.
You and your family have to be able to live, yet you do not beg indirectly and you do not even let yourself be paid for your work.
It is, nevertheless, like that.
You speak illogically.
I see no hope, Father. For this reason, I have already told him that he should let certain matters be administered by a friend, such as the sale of writings or books transmitted to him. But he said that he would become a baby through this. It is, however, my wish that he entrusts these matters to a friend, for otherwise he places the writings and books in sales and marketing without even receiving any thanks or wages for all his work.
That would not be right. Your idea is very good.
I can still do what I want.
You may not do that, because that which is voluntarily given to you is given in sincerity and serves for you and your family to live. Hence, do not use gifts given to you for others' assistance again. Others need assistance less than you. You will often only be exploited.
I just have to be ready for that.
But you and your family live in want because of that. Now listen to what I have to tell you. The wish of my daughter is justified and good. Therefore, entrust a friend with the administration of those matters that secure your existence for you. You have to perform the most difficult task. Therefore, you should pass on writings and books, etc., with appropriate remuneration. This is not a form of greed or any other materialism, and when you receive gifts, this does not mean the acceptance of a beggar's good. It is only the right that is entitled to you in your world, as well as every other life form of your world, each of which performs a job in order to be remunerated and fed for it. Consider the old prophets who were long before your time. They were not as anti-materialistically pronounced as you, but they were also dependent on renderings for their work, which they had to accept in order to be able to live and exist. Think also of the birds of the sky. They too work and are remunerated for it. Their instinct directs them to hunt for vermin, which they catch and destroy in order to protect plant life and other life forms from these. But they are recompensed for this with the fact that they, through the extermination of the vermin, are provided with everything that satisfies their hunger, that gives them strength, and that lets their plumage appear in magnificent splendor.
One could think that you are an ornithologist or a romantic.
Neither is true, but with your comment, you just want to put a different twist on the topic. It is very unpopular to you. After everything that I now know, I hold your anti-materialism in honor, and I consider myself lucky to know that which is anchored in you, but you must be helped. So therefore it is also my wish that a good friend of yours with good knowledge takes care of the mentioned concerns.
That really will not work, Ptah. It just will not work.
You make me seriously agitated. Now listen very carefully to my question. Do you want to endanger our and your very important mission or even question it?
Certainly not, Ptah.
Do you still have the necessary means to live?
Well, it still goes.
You avoided my question. Do you still have the necessary means to live? Your answer should be yes or no.
I said, nevertheless.
Your answer.
No, well, all right. I am bankrupt and cannot even pay my bills from the month of December.
And the celebration, where you celebrate Emmanuel's honor?
You know, nevertheless, that this is only a pseudo-celebration.
You did not answer my question.
Well then, we make a small Christmas tree for the children.
And further?
What further? Somehow, I will soon scrape together something, so that I can also buy them a gift.
That is how the situation is. Your deprivation of your family should not happen, and it will no longer occur in this form in about a year from now. Therefore, I will concern myself about this. Henceforth, I will monitor your steps relating to this. Because of this, I now have to suggest the following to you. You said earlier that you want to fulfill your mission. That is very good. You can only fulfill it, however, if you accept assistance that has been offered to you. I impose on you, as an obligation, that you place the mentioned concerns into the care of a trustworthy friend. Thus, he regulates the necessary matters for you, and you have the essentials to support you and your family. I also impose on you, as an obligation, to accept gifts given to you in love and sincerity as your property. Should you not satisfy this obligation, then I would have to suspend all transmissions to you and all contacts for the duration of the time that you need to reflect. Finally, I would still like to say that from now on, you should accept the free thank you donations of those human beings, whom you help and advise, and should use these for living costs, etc., for you and your family. These include those donations of those human beings whom you release from physical and psychological suffering.
You are quite radical.
You force me to it, for I cannot and may not allow it that you and your family live in want in your current materialistic world and that you are destroyed.
Do you really mean that seriously?
My words correspond to my sense.
Then I will simply comply with your wish and ask someone if he wants to mess with the things mentioned. You do indeed force me to it. But believe me, I still will not discard my anti-materialism, not even if you spit fire and brimstone.
The talk also was not about that. You should remain as you are. It is just that a good friend should administer your concerns mentioned.
Good, then I just stay on track. You cannot forbid me, however, that I only pass this contact report on to all friends and acquaintance once these pesky holidays are over.
Sim Ya-se will already transmit it to you before that time.
But I will quite simply have no time to print it. And I can only pass it on once I have printed it.
So you want to postpone this work for certain reasons.
Exactly.
I cannot keep you from that which I also do not want to do because I understand you and your concerns very well.
Now that is a load off my shoulders.
I exercise no compulsion on you in this matter, but where it is necessary for the purpose of your and your family's well-being, I will intervene.
Topic ended?
That should suffice.
Okay, then I have another question regarding Mount Shasta. I have already talked about this with Sim Ya-se, but something still seems unclear to me. Sim Ya-se told me that distant descendants of the Hyperboreans now live in Mount Shasta, on the Aleutian Islands, and in Alaska. Enoch, however, and also Emmanuel, spoke of the winds between the east and west, or between the north and west. From this, I always thought that the Greenland of the Hyperboreans, so Hyperborea, must have been somewhere far up north, in Greenland or something. But now this does not make sense anymore with Mount Shasta. What should I now think of this?
At the time of Enoch, the North Pole was situated differently than what is the case today. Through cosmic influences and through an upset of the Earth, the North Pole at that time shifted far to the west. The central point of the North Pole at that time is identical to present-day Florida in America. The polar regions at the time of Enoch were wondrous landscapes, filled with palms and other tropical vegetation. You would say that it was paradise on earth, for it had the most favorable climate of your world. Golden apples flourished and ripened there. These are simply called oranges today. In the timelessly young nature of Hyperborea, an uninterrupted summer prevailed, and it was also called the land of timeless youth. The most delicious fruits thrived there, like nowhere else on the earth. The average annual temperature in the land of Hyperborea was 26.7 degrees of your measuring values, and the coldest season never sank below the value of 21.9 degrees of your current values. Similar conditions can still be found today in the former Hyperborea, so in Florida.
That is fantastic, but can you tell me exactly where at the North Pole this Hyperborea lay?
It lay exactly where the land is still called Greenland today, whereby the actual North Pole of that time is not identical with today's North Pole.
So Greenland, because as far as I know this is called Grunland in German.
That is so. Tir na Nog lay there.
What is that?
Greenland and Land of Youth. But at that time it was today's Florida.
So then Heracles, Gilgamesh, Enoch, Emmanuel, Amitabha, Methuselah, and Noah and all others were up there and not in Florida?
In Hyperborea, in Florida, when it was still at the spot where today the land still means grassland. But Emmanuel was not there because he was already in Florida, where it is to be found today.
Ah, of course, he did not live until much later. But in connection with the Hyperboreans, I still come to another question. Namely, about the legendary Agartha. Are you also oriented about this, and can you give me more details about it?
You surprise me again and again. How is the right name familiar to you? To my knowledge, the humanity of Earth still lives in error regarding the name of Agartha. In general, it is still erroneously called Agarthi.
You forget that I was in India and in the Himalayas for a long time and also encountered the blue human beings.
That is why. I should know that. Unfortunately, I cannot give you exhaustive information in an open form because certain things still have to remain confidential. However, this much may be said, that in the vicinity of Shigatse and Shampula is the underground realm of Agartha, the capital and center of distant descendants of extraterrestrials on the Earth. This is the center of the actual secrets that hold a gigantic power in themselves. This city is controlled by the race of the Sons of the Sun. But unfortunately, a tendency toward earthly world domination also prevails with this race, just like with certain earthly religions and secret societies. I may not explain anything else about it openly.
Just as Ptah speaks his last words, an android approaches and says something in a language that is incomprehensible to me.
The missing beam ship has already been found, so we can now continue the journey. Our next goal shall be the moon of the third world. With Sim Ya Se, you can visit it and also photograph it if you want to do that. After that, move on to that world which she wants to let you see.
With Ptah's great spacer, we glide out into space, while Sim Ya-se and I let ourselves fall into the transportation chute and, in the hangar, go to her ship. Soon, we glide out of the airlock into free space and rush onto the moon of the third world. A conversation does not come about for the time being, and so I devote myself entirely to the events on the moon, where the human beings of the future have already built their stations and live there. Sim Ya-se only gives me reference notes on various activities and buildings on the moon, which I then write down as references, in order to have later descriptions for the pictures made by me. The flight in all directions over the moon lasts for several hours, and then Sim Ya-se brings her ship back into free space, where I make two specific observations.
Sim Ya-se, where is Ptah? I cannot see his spacer.
It is in the protection of his radiation screens.
You mean protected from view?
Surely, because we are foreigners here. That is why I also had to put the protective screen into effect around my beam ship. The human beings of this dimension and time have, indeed, become much more peaceful than those on your world in your time. But they are still barbaric and quite aggressive, so they would force us to land, which would be very unpleasant for us.
Aha, so they actually are still like the Earth humans. But then, do they still rush around with their primitive rockets?
What are you thinking? They are living here almost years in the future. Look over there. That is one of their beam ships.
Beam ships? Girl, then these elves already master space travel.
Sure, they also have about years more development behind themselves than the Earth humans of your time, which I already said.
Of course, yes, but I am going crazy. Look there.
I do not understand you.
But still, look, the beam ships that they have. I know those from somewhere. I have seen those before. Wait, yes. They look remarkably similar to the fantasy products of spaceships, which I recently saw on television. It was the broadcast of a futuristic story by the name of Orion. The ship over there looks deceptively like that thing on TV. Now I do think that I am dreaming.
That is, however, not the case. Consider what I already explained to you once before, namely that certain Earth humans receive data and information from external telepathic impulses, and unconsciously, so also authors and such people. Thus, they describe things and possibilities of the future and also make drawings and models. Through this, they slowly prepare the Earth humans and, in particular, the scientists for the coming events, cognitions, and forms, and give them the drive for development. Hence, if you now see the beam ship out there, which corresponds to the form known to you, then for this, you can also find the reason for it in my explanation.
I understand. I did not think of that.
It is really only because of that. But now, let us fly to this world.
A few minutes later, we are already on the planet, only in another dimension, and about years in the future. Sim Yase shows me a lot of very interesting things, which I write down again as keywords, in order to be able to later identify the photos taken. Even the conversation itself is limited to keywords. When we fly out again into space, I noticed by my watch that we were in this world for 7 hours. Far out in space, we come to Ptah's giant ship, go in, and then Ptah leads his ship back into my time and into my dimension. There I remember something and thus direct a wish to Ptah.
Ptah, would it be possible that you could bring me to Venus, since I want to take some photos there? Also, I would like to take somewhat better shots of our moon once, and also of Saturn and of Jupiter. With Jupiter, I am especially interested in the red spot, of which I would like to make a close-up.
I can comply with your wish. If you want to take pictures on Venus, however, then you need a light source with your camera. I have various specialized small beam ships with strong light sources. I will let 2 of these aircraft fly with you so you can take pictures through their light. I can also comply with the wish regarding the moon as well as Saturn and Jupiter. Concerning the close-ups of Jupiter, however, you should try hard to guard these pictures very carefully because Earth scientists could possibly gain insights from these which would not be good for them yet. Also regarding the pictures of me, I must ask you not to spread these and to show these exclusively in your group. You should not make any photos of these and should let the matter rest exclusively with slides, which should remain in your own possession. Originally, this was not planned in such a manner, but there is now the possibility that, on occasion, I will have to walk on the earth protected by a vibration device. Thus, someone could recognize me, which may not be allowed, however. It was already a major exception that you were allowed to take photos of Asket and Nera. And by the way, in the meantime, we have found female Earth humans in America who look deceptively similar to them and who, interestingly enough, also work together in a community of interests.
Boy, that is a shame. But the women, the doubles of Asket and Nera, where are they?
In the country of America. I did, however, say that already.
Can you give me their addresses and mention further details about them?
I would not like to do that for certain reasons.
You are always so mysterious.
In certain matters, I have to be.
Ptah cannot be softened, and he very quickly brings his ship to Venus, where I can, in fact, take a few pictures on the planet on its night side, using the light from 2 of his special ships. Back at the moon, I can also take several pictures, and I also fly around with Sim Yase and her ship. Also with the film camera, I take various pictures and also of an Earth satellite. When we then fly back to the moon again, I ask Sim Yase about the Russian lunar rover, which roved around on the moon years before. She explains that it is possible for her to set the lunar rover in motion, which I naturally want her to do right away. Thus, she flies to the vehicle and does in fact set it in motion through procedures that are inexplicable to me. Of course, I also capture this on film. Then, she goes back up into space, and there, I see a UFO flying over the moon again, which I had already noticed during an earlier flight and which was christened Sewing Machine by Hans Jacob. Of course, I filmed this too. When we then fly to Jupiter in Ptah's ship, I still quickly film the Earth and the moon from far away. At Jupiter, I transfer to Sim Yase's ship again. Then I take 3 pictures in large format of the red spot, while far in the background, Ptah's ship hangs in space, which I also capture on film. After that, Ptah flies into the further vicinity of Saturn, where I can also take a few more pictures. Then his time is up and he has to say goodbye. On Sim Yase's beam ship, we fly back to Earth and she brings me home immediately, and I am astonished at her impertinence.
Have you gone crazy?
I have just checked everything in the area and nothing is moving.
But we are hovering right over my house.
Even so, any observers would not be able to see us. My ship is shielded.
That calms me, but you are still daring.
You should not be surprised about that. I have acquired this from your nature. And I think that it fits well.
You really have a sense of humor.
I have also said that about you before, but now you have to go, for in a few minutes, your wife will awaken. See, I'm landing there, right next to the house. It is a good place. Till we meet again.
Okay, then just go down. Well, okay, that is handy. Till we meet again, Sim Yase.
I let myself slide through the hatch, and suddenly I do not see the beam ship anymore. I raise my hand upward, and sure enough, my hand just disappears, but I sense that it meets with metal. Thus the ship is there, even though I cannot see it anymore. So I leave, and as I am standing only a few meters away on the street, I feel a slight pull. I quickly go back with an outstretched arm, but I cannot feel anything. There, Sim Yase's voice penetrates into me.
I am already very high above you, just look.
I look up into the sky. There, a large light, which is now quickly becoming smaller, moves very quickly and vertically into the sky, and soon disappears.
I still saw the light.
Sure, but go now, for in 7 minutes your wife will awaken. Goodbye, dear friend.
All the best, Sim Yase, and many thanks.